Now, a new study finds there are hidden buildings and tunnels underneath the prison yard.
A secret tunnel has been uncovered beneath Alcatraz, hidden for nearly a century behind a wall that was never part of the original design. While expanding the museum, workers struck a hollow surface and exposed a narrow gap that led into darkness. What they found was absent from every construction blueprint and missing from all prison archives, which made its existence even more disturbing. If Alcatraz was built as an impenetrable fortress, why would such a carefully engineered passage exist at all? Could this tunnel force us to rewrite everything we thought we knew about Alcatraz? The first signs of the mystery appeared most ordinarily. A group of workers, tasked with expanding Alcatraz's museum space, was tearing down an old wall when something caught their attention. Instead of the heavy stone they expected, their hammers struck a surface that sounded hollow. At first, they thought it was a construction flaw, but when bricks loosened, the truth became impossible to ignore. Behind that wall was not solid ground, but a narrow opening leading into darkness. The discovery shocked supervisors because every corner of Alcatraz had been mapped and documented for decades. The prison's blueprints had been checked countless times by architects and historians, yet there was no record of this section. Archivists confirmed that the 1930s plans showed nothing. The gap in the wall was not supposed to be there, and this absence of information raised more suspicion than the tunnel itself. As the workers cleared more of the opening, a shaft revealed itself. It was not crude, but carefully designed with steel reinforcements and stone packed tightly to mask sound. Whoever built this structure had done so with precision and a clear purpose. Some of the steel even carried serial numbers from the 1920s, long before Alcatraz became a federal prison. That meant the tunnel could not have been carved by inmates. It was older, intentional, and created by someone with resources. Historians noted another strange fact. In the 1920s, Alcatraz was still a military fort and detention site. If the tunnel dated back to that time, it suggested involvement by the military or contractors working on government projects. The conversation shifted. Instead of asking how prisoners carved it, experts now wondered why the government itself would build and hide such a passage. The deeper the exploration went, the more unsettling the design appeared. The shaft twisted sharply, breaking standard prison patterns, and dropped into spaces with no ventilation. It was completely disconnected from sewage lines or utility routes. This was not an extension of the prison, nor an accident. It was hidden deliberately, meant to remain secret for generations. The FBI was called in once the scale of the find became clear. Agents realized this was not a maintenance error, but a secret embedded in the foundation of one of America's most secure prisons. The workers had uncovered a forgotten piece of history, pointing to agendas far more complex than housing criminals. If Alcatraz was meant to keep men locked away, then what was the purpose of a tunnel built so carefully long before the prison even opened? And why was it hidden so well that generations of guards, inmates, and historians never knew it existed? These questions mark the beginning of a chilling new chapter in the story of Alcatraz. When FBI agents finally reached the end of the hidden shaft, they came face to face with a massive iron door buried deep in the stone. The door was rusted and sealed tight, its hinges set with almost mathematical precision, as if someone had gone to great lengths to keep whatever lay behind it untouched. Breaking through was not simple. Welding torches and heavy tools were needed to eat away at the layers of corrosion, and every strike against the metal echoed like thunder in the silent tunnel. The moment the door gave way, the air that escaped felt heavy and stale, as though it had been trapped for decades without a single breath of circulation. What they found inside shocked everyone. Instead of rubble or forgotten equipment, the chamber appeared frozen in time. Along the walls, boxes of old documents sat stacked neatly, their paper yellowing at the edges, yet still holding together as if waiting for someone to open them. A primitive radio system rested on a table in one corner, its dials untouched, as if it had been abandoned mid-use. Maps of the San Francisco Bay currents were spread across another surface, their lines drawn carefully by hand rather than printed. None of it looked accidental. The room had been arranged with purpose, prepared for someone to stay. Even more disturbing were the 3 metal cots lined against one wall. They were not tossed there randomly, but placed as though for long-term habitation. Whoever used this chamber had not planned a quick visit. They expected to live here, at least for days or weeks at a time. Dust covered every surface, but the layout was too organized to be dismissed as storage. It felt like a command post, a hidden base that had been locked away beneath the most infamous prison in America. And then there were the clocks. 2 of them sat side by side, their hands frozen at exactly 2:17 a.m. Both were coated in thick layers of dust, untouched since the moment they had stopped. The question was impossible to ignore. Why that specific time? Was it the marker of an event, a signal left behind, or simply a coincidence that no one could explain? For the agents standing in that room, the silence of the chamber made it feel less like a coincidence and more like a deliberate message. The FBI's own memos later described the atmosphere as prepared for someone, suggesting that whoever had built and used the chamber was expecting an operation, not just hiding away. With its documents, radios, maps, and sleeping space, this was not a storeroom. It was a hub. A place where secrets had been guarded, where plans might have been made, and where movements could be tracked without the outside world ever knowing. If such a place existed beneath Alcatraz, the next question was unavoidable. Who had designed this hidden command center, and for what purpose? And could the tools found here connect the tunnel to the shadowy politics of the Cold War? The most unsettling discovery inside the hidden chamber was not the maps or the cots, but the strange equipment in one corner. Investigators identified it as high-grade encryption technology once used by the CIA in the late 1950s and early 1960s. These machines scrambled and decoded sensitive messages, vital for secret communication during the Cold War. The idea that such tools were hidden beneath a prison shocked even the most experienced agents. This was not something ordinary inmates could have built or smuggled. It pointed directly to government involvement. For historians, this raised new questions about Alcatraz's true role. The island had always been described as a fortress for dangerous men, yet the presence of CIA-grade equipment suggested another purpose. To operate such machines, trained personnel would have been required, which meant someone with access and authority had worked in that chamber. The possibility that Alcatraz doubled as an intelligence hub turned the old image of the prison upside down. The location of the island itself made the theory more convincing. Alcatraz sits in the middle of San Francisco Bay, perfectly placed to watch naval routes and military operations. During the Cold War, when fear of Soviet infiltration and nuclear threats dominated security, such a position would have been invaluable. It is possible that while the public believed Alcatraz was only a prison, the government quietly used its isolation as a shield for surveillance and covert projects. Declassified papers later supported this disturbing idea. Some files described a secret program known as Project Warden's Shadow. According to these documents, the Department of Justice, with oversight from the CIA, tested methods of psychological control on high-risk inmates. Reports suggested that some prisoners were subjected to extreme isolation, while others with links to organized crime were monitored for recruitment. If the hidden chamber and its mysterious tools were tied to this program, then Alcatraz may have been a testing ground where human subjects were observed under conditions that could never be admitted publicly. The tunnel itself added to the mystery. Its careful construction made little sense as an escape route, but it fit perfectly as a secure passage for intelligence activity. Reinforced walls and secret access points suggested deliberate planning. Some experts believe the tunnel was used to move documents, sensitive materials, or even personnel without anyone above knowing. It was never meant for inmates. It was meant for missions. These revelations changed the way people looked at Alcatraz. Instead of just a prison for gangsters and killers, it began to resemble a stage where espionage, psychological testing, and national security quietly intersected. But if Alcatraz truly was a secret outpost, one chilling question followed. Could the famous escape of 1962 have been connected to these covert operations, and were Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers really just prisoners, or something more? The escape of 1962 has always been one of the greatest mysteries in American history, but the discovery of the hidden tunnel forces us to see it differently. On the night of June 11th, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin carried out one of the boldest prison breaks of the century. According to the official account, they dug through cell walls with stolen tools, climbed utility shafts, and set off into the bay on a raft made from raincoats. For decades, this story was treated as fact, but the evidence beneath Alcatraz suggests the raft may have been only a distraction. Historians now wonder if the three men had knowledge of the tunnel and the secret chamber. If so, their escape was not about risking the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay, but about using a hidden passage no guard ever knew. The raft could have served as a decoy, leading authorities to believe they drowned, while in reality, they may have disappeared underground. This theory explains why no bodies or proof of drowning were ever found. Suspicion grew stronger with a letter allegedly written by John Anglin in 2013. In it, he wrote, "We made it that night, but barely." For years, these words were thought to describe their struggle against waves. Now, they could be reinterpreted as a dangerous journey through the tunnel, a passage that may have collapsed or nearly trapped them. The phrase "barely" takes on an entirely new meaning in this context. The role of Alan West, the fourth man in the plan, also changes under this lens. West was left in his cell, reportedly because he could not remove his vent in time. But what if that was not the real reason? Some believe West was never told about the tunnel. His erratic behavior and tendency to draw attention could have made him a liability. If Morris and the Anglins excluded him, then the excuse of being too slow may have been a cover for deliberate secrecy. Rumors also persist that a guard may have been involved. Some theories suggest an insider provided knowledge of the passage in exchange for favors. Others speculate Frank Morris, known for his intelligence and connections, may have received help from people outside who already knew of the tunnel. The possibility of inside assistance turns the escape into something far more calculated. If the hidden tunnel was indeed part of the plan, then the escape may not have been reckless at all. It could have been the execution of a strategy that used secrets buried under Alcatraz for decades. And if that is true, one question remains. Were Morris and the Anglins simply criminals, or were they players in a larger game tied to intelligence and hidden agendas? The mystery deepened when investigators uncovered skeletal remains beneath a collapsed section of the tunnel, half flooded by decades of moisture. The bones were pressed against the earth as if the person had been trapped, and in the figure's hand was a worn satchel, its fabric rotting but still intact enough to hold clues. Inside were coins minted in 1961, water-damaged maps, and nearly disintegrated notes. These items looked like supplies for survival, as if the individual once believed they were close to freedom. Forensic testing confirmed the skeleton did not belong to Frank Morris or the Anglin brothers. That fact changed everything. If not the famous escapees, then who was this unknown figure? The discovery suggested a possible fourth man, someone erased from official records. The idea of a forgotten accomplice spread quickly, fueling speculation that the escape was more complex than anyone had imagined. The satchel was not the only unsettling detail. On the damp wall near the remains, faint scratchings were found. They formed crude letters. "They left me here." The words carried a chilling weight, suggesting betrayal or abandonment. Whoever wrote them knew they had been left behind to die. This phrase shifted the story of Alcatraz from a daring escape to one of deception and loss. The 1961 coins deepened the mystery. They were in good condition compared to the decayed fabric, implying they had been stored carefully, perhaps hoarded for use once freedom was achieved. Why were they left in the tunnel? Were they meant to finance a new life, or were they tied to Cold War operations? Some historians argue the coins hint at a hidden network where money, maps, and codes moved through Alcatraz for purposes beyond incarceration. The skeleton soon became a symbol of unanswered questions. Was this a prisoner who tried to escape but was never recorded, or an accomplice betrayed after helping? Some suggest the figure could have been tied to intelligence operations, perhaps a courier who never returned. Without identification, the remains became another shadow over Alcatraz's history, a puzzle piece that refuses to fit into the official record. The discovery divided the public. To some, it proved the escape of 1962 was bigger than anyone believed. To others, it hinted that Alcatraz was more than a prison, possibly a site for secret experiments where lives were used and discarded. But the greater question remains: if there was a fourth man left behind, who ordered it, and why was his existence erased from history? The discovery of the skeleton was shocking, but the real storm began when researchers compared it with files recently declassified by the government. Some of the details matched far too closely to be a coincidence. Hidden within the archives were documents about Operation Seahawk, a Cold War program designed to test escape routes, counterintelligence strategies, and psychological endurance. The notes described the use of volunteers drawn from prisons, men considered expendable who would be placed in controlled environments to simulate breakouts. Alcatraz was specifically mentioned not only as a prison, but as a testing ground. This suggested that the island may have been part of a broader experiment tied to Cold War paranoia. Investigators noticed that the tunnels beneath Alcatraz bore the same markings found in military facilities from the same period. Reinforced concrete, ventilation shafts, and water drainage systems followed standards common in naval bunkers, not civilian prisons. Even the electrical wiring seemed too advanced for a basement built in the 1930s. These similarities fueled suspicion that the US government had secretly modified Alcatraz, transforming it into a hidden laboratory for human trials. Another strange clue came from the coins found with the skeleton. The year 1961 placed them at the height of Cold War tensions when the Berlin Wall was going up, and both the US and the Soviet Union were desperate to test unconventional tactics. If Alcatraz hosted experimental operations, the coins could have been planted as controlled variables, items meant to trace the subject's progress or act as psychological triggers. Suddenly, what looked like survival supplies might have been deliberate tools in a government trial. Former guards interviewed in the 1970s also raised suspicion. Some recalled sealed corridors they were ordered never to enter. Others described shipments of equipment arriving at odd hours, carried by men in unmarked uniforms. One guard admitted hearing drilling beneath the floors late at night. At the time, these details sounded like rumors, but now they aligned with the physical tunnels and the skeleton found within. The greatest mystery came from one line in the declassified papers: Subject 4 terminated. Project integrity maintained. No name was attached, only a number. But the match between this phrase and the anonymous skeleton seemed undeniable. If Subject 4 was the body underground, then Alcatraz was not just a prison break story. It was the stage for a classified experiment where one man was deliberately left behind. This interpretation changes how we see the escape of 1962. Perhaps Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers were not only criminals but unwilling participants in an intelligence trial. Maybe their escape was allowed, even engineered, to study human limits under pressure. If so, then their fate was never about freedom. It was about data. Such a possibility forces us to ask, if the government could hide the truth of Alcatraz for decades, what other Cold War secrets remain buried, waiting to be uncovered? When the news about the hidden tunnels and the skeleton broke, the world was shocked, but the reaction went far beyond simple curiosity. People were not just asking what had been found, they were asking why it had been kept secret for so long. For decades, Alcatraz had been sold to the public as a prison of legends, a place where criminals faced justice and where escape was impossible. Now, with evidence pointing to secret experiments, the story shifted from crime to conspiracy. The public demanded answers, and pressure mounted on the government to explain. Social media platforms exploded with theories, many of them going viral within hours. Some posts compared the Alcatraz case to other Cold War projects that had once been denied, such as MK-Ultra. Statistics showed that mentions of Alcatraz experiment increased by over 300% within a week across online forums. It was clear that this discovery had tapped into a deep mistrust that still lingers today. For the families of the escapees, the revelation was even more personal. For years, the FBI had insisted that Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers likely drowned during their escape. Relatives who never accepted this explanation now saw the skeleton and the secret tunnels as proof that the official story was incomplete. One niece of John Anglin gave an interview saying that her family had always believed the government was hiding something. Her words echoed a feeling that spread quickly through the media, that the men may have been pawns in a game far bigger than their own crimes. The discovery also reignited the cultural fascination with Alcatraz. Tours to the island suddenly saw a spike in visitors, with ticket sales climbing nearly 40% in the weeks after the announcement. Tour guides reported that visitors no longer asked mainly about escape attempts, but instead pressed for details about the tunnels, the skeleton, and the idea of secret Cold War testing. For many, the prison stopped being just a monument to justice and became a symbol of mystery and hidden truths. Journalists and historians rushed to revisit archives, searching for overlooked files. Some found suspicious budget lines from the early 1960s that seemed to fund special construction on the island. Others pointed to testimonies from guards that had been dismissed as rumors but now carried new weight. The past was no longer settled. It was alive again, demanding to be re-examined. But perhaps the most unsettling reaction came from younger generations who grew up hearing about conspiracy theories but rarely seeing them confirmed. For them, the Alcatraz revelations were proof that history books can hide just as much as they reveal. High school students began sharing the story in online study groups, teachers debated whether to update their lessons, and podcasts devoted entire seasons to exploring the case. What once sounded like wild speculation had suddenly gained credibility, and that shifted how people trusted official narratives. The skeleton under Alcatraz was no longer just a human tragedy. It became a mirror reflecting the shadows of government secrecy and the cost of silence. If one of America's most famous landmarks could hide such a story, then what else might remain buried beneath places we think we know? That question, hanging heavy in the air, set the stage for what came next. A closer look at the legacy of Alcatraz and how this discovery reshaped the meaning of escape itself. The mystery of Alcatraz is no longer just about criminals or impossible escapes, but about the hidden truths that walls and silence tried to bury. From secret tunnels to forgotten bones, every discovery has forced us to rethink what we thought we knew about this island. Some see these clues as proof that no prison can lock away every secret, while others see them as a warning of how easily history can hide the darkest truths. So what other legends could still be waiting to be rewritten? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next mystery we uncover.